Hello. We are here to discuss Beetlejuice Beetlejuice in its entirety. Look, this movie, it's not perfect, but I will say, in a lot of ways, it was a breath of fresh air for me. And there's some reasons for that. We're gonna get into it. Hello again, everybody. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is a movie I saw a little while ago, and I really enjoyed it. I kind of talked about it in my short. I talked about it in my immediate reaction, but in this review, we're going to be getting into spoilers, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of the story in terms of the plots, because when it comes to some of the critiques that I have of this film, and when it comes to some of the moments that I actually genuinely enjoy in this film, the plot is a big part of that. So spoiler warning in effect here, because we're going to be getting into that in depth. I think it's interesting because at least on TikTok, there were some people that seemed to vehemently disagree with my enjoyment of this film. But the hard thing is when I do my little shorts, my little 3 things you need to know, obviously those are really quick. I'm not able to get into the details of why I really enjoy something and what it brought to the table. Now, a lot of what I think this film brings to the table before we get into the story of it is just the production value of the film and the fact that it's not afraid to, I don't know, be a film. It's got great music. It's got great sets. It's got some really fun makeup. It's got an opening titles. We get opening credits, everybody. Do you know how long it's been? I feel like since I've seen a film with actual opening credits, it took me back. It made me feel like I traveled back in time. That's how long it's been. I was like, oh my goodness, is this movie theater a time machine? And the opening credits for the film also are reminiscent of the original Beetlejuice film, which I quite enjoyed and thought was a fun homage, but also just helps to play on that sense of nostalgia, which is, I think, kind of what you need a little bit from a sequel these days, especially a sequel that is this much later after the original. I mean, a lot of the nostalgia here doesn't feel like it's just nostalgia baiting us. It feels like it's nostalgia because the people behind the film, all these people I think just actually enjoy Beetlejuice and just are excited to revisit it. I definitely get that sense from the film. So let's talk about some of the story of what's going on here and some of the things that I enjoyed and some of the things where I feel like we lost our way a bit. Things that I enjoyed. I really liked how they dealt with Charles's character in this. If you are not aware, Jeffrey Jones, who played Charles in the original film, basically he's done some really heinous stuff. In fact, the stuff is so heinous that I can't really say it on YouTube without risk of demonetization. I'm just gonna leave it at that. You could look it up if you want to know more about it. I don't like to say all the weird terms that you can say to get around that stuff, so I'm just not gonna do that, and I'm just gonna say he did some really bad things, so not in this movie. However, still kind of working, which is kind of wild. How they dealt with him not being in this movie is kind of, I think, awfully brilliant. It's really awful what they do to his character. They kill him off in such a fun, creative way, and they really play with the fact that we're just not even going to have his face in this, really. You know, you see a picture of him. Other than that, you don't see him at all in the film. They really just committed to that. They don't even have to do his voice, because what they end up doing with his character is he dies early on, which is obviously why all of our cast come together. That's what brings everyone together, and then the plot sort of comes out of that. But he is the setup, but he's still in the film in the afterlife and just running around dealing with all of this stuff in that world as he tries to figure out what's happening to him after he's died. He ends up getting bitten by a shark, and so you don't see his head at all. His voice is garbled, and it's really kind of funny. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't know if that's morbid of me to say that that's funny, but I said it, so maybe I am a bit morbid, so I quite enjoyed that. I mean, obviously, I feel like I'm a morbid person in some way if I enjoy Beetlejuice, and if I enjoy Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, and I do enjoy both of those films. In terms of some of the things that I think I like, but that are kind of weird. I also really like some of the new characters that we get in this. I liked Jenna Ortega as Astrid. I liked Willem Dafoe and Monica Belluci in this. I think they're great. However, I will say, I feel like although they're both, I think, having a good time in the film and I like their characters, I do feel like their characters never fully get woven into the story in a way that feels meaningful. So although I enjoy watching them on screen, I just feel like they're kind of window dressing. And that's, I guess, my issue with this film in terms of the story of it. It kind of feels like it is bigger than it needs to be. It has more parts than it needs to be. Whereas at its core, what I feel like this film is about is it's about the relationship between Astrid, who's played by Jenna Ortega, and Lydia, who is once again played by Winona Ryder. I feel like at its core, this is a story about how death in the family brings the family together and this generational relationship between Delia, Lydia, and Astrid and their bonding. But it feels like we never really do that. Like, the film is more concerned with dealing with extra relationships that Lydia and Astrid are involved in than just trusting their actresses by giving them enough to do in terms of their relationship with each other. And I wish that that was more the focal point of it. But at the same time, one of the most interesting subplots that we get in this involves Astrid and a ghost boy. And I loved that relationship and thought it was really fun. And I personally didn't really catch on to it until before, like right before the reveal. I know a lot of people are saying they saw it like right away. I was not one of those people. So for me, it was a fun twist. It was a fun twist that made sense. And I liked the way they did it. And I liked the way that they established some of the smoking guns here. Just the fact that, you know, Lydia can see ghosts, Astrid can't see ghosts. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, she did end up getting her mom's powers and she can also see the dead. That was kind of cool. I liked just this, even this weird ghost relationship, even though the guy ended up being like the worst person ever, who we find out is basically a homicidal maniac. I think that whole idea is really fun, but I also feel like that's kind of a different movie. Like, that could have been a whole movie itself, and then Lydia and Astrid's relationship could be a whole movie itself. So I feel like there are things that we could have gotten rid of, but at the same time, some of the best moments also come from the stuff that I would deem to be window dressing here. I would say the same thing, I think, about some of the stuff with Willem Dafoe. I think he's really funny in this. I think he's really having a great time. I don't want to get rid of him because I love him in it, but do we need him here? No, not really. At the end of the film, there's also another musical sequence that I feel like goes on a bit too long, even though it was really fun. And it does feel like the main antagonist here, Dolores, played by Monica Belluci, who is Beetlejuice's ex-wife, who is hunting him down. Their whole backstory is very strange, but I kind of love how weird it is. But then it feels like it gets wrapped up so fast. But then I will say, I just went back and rewatched Beetlejuice recently. Also, if you guys want a retro review on that, let me know because I'd be happy to talk about it. But I went back and watched that recently, and I do feel like the ending of Beetlejuice is kind of that. Like, it's weird because Beetlejuice as a film is kind of a bunch of things just thrown together. It does have a through line. It is a tighter film because it's also a shorter film. It has a shorter run time than this film. But there are, like, the ending of that film is just very like, and then this happens, and the movie is done. Whereas, yeah, here it is a lot of things thrown together, but it's just longer. So it really draws attention to the fact that there's some parts of this movie that we don't really need. And with Beetlejuice, there's that as well, but because there's not as much of it, you're kind of fine to accept that, you know, there's scenes that maybe aren't crucial, but they're really fun. So we allow them to exist. And it also has a smaller cast. It also has less places that it takes us. This film is very expansive in the sense that we go to multiple different locations. We're in New York, and then, you know, we're back at the house, and then we're going to, you know, the afterlife, and all of these things. There's so many places that we go to. And is it a bit much? Yeah, maybe. I think it is a bit much. Ultimately, what I feel with Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is that it's a breath of fresh air in terms of the artistry behind some of the filmmaking here. The lighting is also great. The cinematography is great. Like I said, pretty much all elements of this film. The editing is really good. I just feel like they nailed all of that. But at the same time, the magic of the original is that it's such a weird film. And when you make another one, I don't think you can ever really recapture that magic because it's no longer as weird because we're just continuing a story. Like all of the weirdness of Beetlejuice and Michael Keaton, it loses some of its pizzazz because we're doing it again and we've already done it. And the weirdness was in that it was the first time. You know what I mean? So here, we're more familiar with it, so it's ultimately less weird. And I think that actually works against the film. Also, Michael Keaton has obviously aged. I feel like he is still an extremely talented performer. I love watching him as Beetlejuice, but there is some physical energy that I feel like is missing a bit in this performance that he had originally. I do feel that his obsession with Lydia in this is also just feels weird. I mean, I guess it's always been weird, but it wasn't as big of a plot point in the original film. So it feels weirder here because it's a bigger plot point, his obsession with her. And it is a weird thing just in retrospect, revisiting this as an adult. I mean, I watched the animated show when I was a kid and I really liked it. And I really romanticized, I feel, the relationship between Beetlejuice and Lydia, which is probably something we could say about society, something. But at the end of the day, when I look at it now as an adult...
When you're dealing with a power-mad vegetable, you've got to take a firm stand.
Oh, right, babes. A stand? It's the only thing a vegetable understands.
It's weird. It's really weird. It's fine that it's in there. It didn't bother me in that regard. I don't think we get rid of it. But just the fact that it's focused on this much made me somewhat uncomfortable. I'm not going to deny. Also, it's unclear as to, I mean, I guess because Beetlejuice wants to come into the world of the living, but I feel like we don't really touch on that point enough. Like how Lydia is this tool almost that he can use to become free. We don't really talk about that. And I feel like that should have been talked about more in this. Maybe it's mentioned once, but yeah. So ultimately, this film feels that it's bigger than it needs to be. It just feels like it could have been trimmed up more, but also at the same time, some of the stuff that's not essential is where some of the best moments come from in the story. I mean, it's hard to figure out what should be in here. I also love the sequence with Monica Bellucci stapling herself back together. Is it indulgent? It certainly is. But does it look so cool? It does look so cool. And I love the way it's set to the music and everything like that. So, yeah, for me, I still really enjoy it. I would still say I want to give it still a 4 out of 5 just because I feel like just from all the filmmaking standpoints, I have to give it that 4. You know, it's not necessarily as much the story here, but everyone's just bringing their A game to the film, and it's really fun, I think, and really entertaining. And, you know, compared to some of the other movies we're getting today, some of them are not even fun or entertaining or good. So it's miles above those. So in comparison, I think I have to give it that 4 out of 5. But in case people were wondering if it was because I was like obsessed with the story or anything like that, no, the story is kind of meh, but that's also kind of a Beetlejuice thing, I think. And I'd also just like to finish off this review by saying, I think we need justice for Bob. The whole time I was watching this, I was worried for Bob. I love that Bob decided to be a stand-in for Beetlejuice. He put his life on the line. And how was he rewarded? Soul sucked away. Although I do like they had a tribute to him at the end of the movie. The end of this movie, by the way, is bizarre. It is so weird, and I'm still processing that. I don't think I like the ending of it, but I do love how weird it is. But it's strange. And I think it's trying to lead into a Beetlejuice 3, but not in a way that feels excessive. And that is something that I do appreciate about the ending. It leaves it a little bit open, but this could also be a complete package deal. However, this is a sequel that if you watch the sequel without watching Beetlejuice, I don't know how that's going to be for you. I will say, I have a friend that watched it who hadn't seen the original and really liked it, but I am curious if anyone is going to see this first before seeing Beetlejuice and what their thoughts will be, because I feel like this movie would be really weird without context. Like, really, you might not even be able to understand what's happening. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what you think. Also, I have to say, Catherin O'Hara is a legend. She's amazing in this. I didn't say that, but I need to say that before I go because it is true. And she's my favorite part of this film, and she's my favorite part of most things that she's in. She's a scene stealer, and I freaking love her for it. She's amazing as Delia, and I'm glad that we got to see her weird performance art because it was glorious with all of the birds and her screaming and taking pictures of it. Gosh, it must have been fun to be in this movie with Catherin O'Hara. If I ever get to be in a film with Catherin O'Hara, I will die a happy person because I don't think it gets better than that, personally. That's everything for me for this one. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. I'll see you next time. And until then, friends, stay nerdy. Bye!